Hey gang, John Bacarella here with your Lake St. Clair Fishing Report, brought to you by Sportsmen's Direct. It is Friday, June 3rd, and it is beautiful outside, and it was yesterday too, and it looks like it's going to be great all weekend. Water temperature at Belle Isle today, when I checked this morning, was 65 degrees, and which is a great temperature. I mean, the lake temps right now are just about perfect for everything. But 65 degrees, and it looks like it's looking at the extended forecast next week for the next 10 days. It's just going to be really nice, call it early summer temps, you know, mid 70s maybe. I think today might be the warmest day for the next several days, just like 80 degrees or something. But really nice temperatures. A little bit of rain next week, I think on Monday. But, you know, wind velocities and directions and everything for the next 10 days look really good. So, I mean, you can double check me, you know, if you're planning on coming up for next week. But next week looks pretty darn good for weather-wise, for getting in on all this great fishing action we got out there on the lake. And that water temp's it's going to pretty much stick right where it is with the highs, looking at the highs and the lows for next week. One thing I did want to start talking about now is for the guys that are using specifically minnows, whether it's golden shiners for bass or, you know, emeralds for perch or whatever. But as these lake temps warm up, it is kind of important to pay attention to how you're taking care of your bait. If you're buying minnows from any of the bait shops, and this goes for anywhere that you're buying them. I mean, it's not just up here. So the tank systems that a lot of shops use, like ours, have a chiller on them, which keeps that water fairly cold. Okay, so for most of the year, we try to match that water temp with what the lake temps are out there within reason. But once we get into summertime temps, we're not quite there yet, but once we get into the point where that lake temp is in the 70s or so, our tanks are going to have that water quite a bit colder than what that lake water is. And for any of you folks that have ever had aquarium fish, you know that, like, when you buy a new fish and you bring it home, you throw that bag in the aquarium and you let it sit there until the temperatures get, you know, close to each other before you let the fish go. Otherwise, he just goes belly up, right? Well, the same thing can happen with your live bait. So from any of the shops, especially those of us that are using chillers, you really want to, when you get that bait from us, number one, you want to have as much water volume in whatever you're putting that bait into. So if you got one of them little trolling buckets or something, bring a 5-gallon bucket in with you so that we can add water not just to that trolling bucket, but into your bucket as well, because water volume is your friend for keeping minnows alive anyways. But also, so when you get out on the lake, you can take some extra water, maybe that lake water, and do like a 50-50 mix in with your minnows that are in that bucket already, okay? So that kind of already splits, if there's any differential in water temp, it splits it between the two. So you're only going to have, you know, like a much smaller jump when you take that trolling bucket if you put it out there into the lake. So you really want to just try to, you don't want to shock, it's called temperature shock. You don't want to temperature shock those bait fish. So if you want to talk more about that, you know, when you're in the store, I can explain more to you. But that's kind of the, you know, the basis for it, is you want to try to not shock those bait fish by just throwing them right out in that lake water, because that surface temp's probably going to be pretty darn warm, and it's going to kill all your bait. And so we don't want you to have a bad day. We want you to catch fish out there, and having healthy live bait really goes a long way in helping you catch fish. So that's all I wanted to say. I've been wanting to say that for a while, and I keep forgetting to do it at the beginning of the fishing report. The other thing I want to talk about too is keep getting calls about that Crocker Road boat launch. So that's the Clinton River cutoff. That's the one a lot of you bass guys like to use. That is closed, okay, for probably the remainder of the season, and for good reason, because they are doing a massive renovation on that launch. They're trying to they're redesigning it to go out the canal just to the south, so that we don't have all that sediment built up out there that shuts it down constantly 2-3 times a year. So it's going to be closed for the rest of the season. So I keep getting calls every week about it, and people come in asking about it. So I may add it to the front end of the next few reports, so just so that you guys don't go over there and get confused. Launch at Harley Ensign, which is just down the road from us at South River Road. It's the mouth of the Clinton River. It's a big major boat launch. You can launch at the Metro Park, and then there's another launch down in St. Clair Shores down by 9 Mile Road. So those are the kind of the main launches until you get to the other side of Selfridge Air National Guard Base at Hall Road. So that's another major launch over there as well, going up into Anchor Bay. So those are the two house cleaning things I wanted to talk about. Housekeeping, I guess is how they refer to that I wanted to talk about here at the beginning. So back to the fishing report. So 65 degrees out there on the lake. Start up at the north end and work our way down. St. Clair River is on fire for walleye, okay? Including guys casting from shore in the middle of the day, taking the limits of walleyes, and nice walleyes. These aren't those ones that you gotta put on the tape to check to see if they're legal size or not. I mean, these are some really nice fish, 18, 19, 20 inch, even bigger walleyes coming out of that St. Clair River right now, even for guys casting from shore, and that's in the daytime. So the nighttime bites even been better yet. Whippers are tearing them up. The guys that are trolling bottom bouncers up there are tearing them up, and plenty of guys casting from shore. So that is just fire right now. South in the South Channel too, going out into the lake has really turned on. I'm getting reports of just, you know, huge numbers of fish up in that area as well. So down here on the lake now, walleye fishing down here. One of our pro staffers, Isaac Hanna, wanted to go out. He went out. I know he went to 3 different locations during the week, and 3 completely different environments where he was fishing. He started earlier in the week. He was in 7 feet of water, in really close to the shore, or close to our store over here, but also close to shore as well. 7 feet of water, heavy weeds, and pull the limit of fish with no trouble out there. And again, you guys hear me preach all the time about watercolor, watercolor, watercolor. If you find the right water clarity, those fish can be in really shallow, okay? So, and when you're fishing those kind of fish, you want to make sure that you're fishing up above those fish, because you want to give them the best chance of, you want to give the most fish the best chance of seeing your bait. So when you're in shallow, when you're in skinny like that, sometimes it's best to not do the bottom bouncer thing and to get up and just fish above the weed tops and allow those fish to come up out of those weeds and take your bait. So, so yeah, he started out, he got fishing 7 feet of water. Then he went up into the north end of the lake, was also fishing relatively shallow up there. When I say north end, I mean up by Anchor Bay area, fishing weed flats up there, caught tons of fish up there as well. And then later in the week, he came out here to the main lake again. I think he was out in front of Memorial down that way, down in front of the mile roads, in like 14 to 15 feet of water. So again, completely different environment, right? I mean, he went from shallow weeds to out fishing, you know, main lake. And again, easy limits of fish out there. Running boards, I'm guessing, out there with cranks, judging by his pictures. But anyway, so there's fish. My point is, there's fish right now all over the lake as well. So if you don't want to fish the river, don't fish the river. There's plenty of fish out in the lake. You just got to move around until you find a pot of fish. Once you find a pot of fish, these fish are really tight. There's like a huge number of fish in a relatively small area. What you do is you mark those fish either with your electronics or a buoy, although most guys are using electronics now, right? Hit a waypoint button. But don't travel too far. Once you stop catching fish, go back through that school again. I mean, that's it. And you're going to find you're going to get doubles and triples going through those schools of fish, and you'll be done in short order. Detroit River is still going on the walleyes. Still getting reports of guys that are down there jigging, and they're still tearing them up down there. So, you know, the walleye numbers are at a historic level right now, and I don't see it changing anytime soon, because you just got that many more fish in the system that are spawning. So even if we just get moderate to mediocre spawns, it's still going to just keep replenishing. So right now, if you're a walleye fisherman, this is like the best. This is as good as it gets, and the quality of the fish is fantastic. So that's all I'm kind of done with walleye now. So there's tons of walleye, tons of ways to get them out there right now if you want to go out and target walleyes. Smallmouth bass fishing. A lot of people in town right now from out of state fishing these smallies. Right now you've got fish that are post-spawn. Yep, some of them are done. And then you've got fish that are actively spawning. And then you've also got fish that are pre-spawn. So you've got all the different stages right now of an early season smallie fishery. And so you got to treat it that way. So if you want to go in and you want to fish spawners, you're not finding a lot of fish where you're at, you might have to wait for another good wave to come in. A lot of guys are having the best success right now fishing the transition zone, because out in that transition zone, and which can vary depending on where you are along the lake, generally it's going to be like 9, 10, 11 feet of water, right? And that's the area prior to going in for most of those fish to spawn. That's where you're going to have your best mix of fish. You're going to have some deep water spawners out there. You're going to have some pre-spawn fish out there, and you're going to have some post-spawn fish out there that are moving around looking to feed again. So if you're not catching fish, or if you don't have the right water conditions that you like, maybe that transition zone may be a great place for you to go out if you're trying to catch, especially if you're trying to catch really good numbers of big fish. So that's my best advice to you on that. All areas of the lake right now with that water temperature at 65 plus degrees, and a lot of the shorelines you're going to find water temps on a warm sunny day are probably poking around 70 degrees, okay? So the whole lake is pretty much ready for spawning. So whether you're up on the north end up in Anchor Bay, or if you're down on the south end by the Detroit River, the water, I mean, you're going to have spawning fish pretty much everywhere you go. So that's the deal on the smallies right now. So fish them however you like. Drop shot baits, swim baits, tubes, however you want to fish them will work. For me personally, I like to stay away from cranks unless I have to, because I just don't like dealing with all those treble hooks flying around. I like the, Ned rigging. I always forget to mention Ned rigging, but Ned rigging is a big deal out here as well. And it's a great way to fish because you're dealing with single hooks. So, easy on, easy off, and on to the next fish. So that's the way I like to do it on smallies. That way you stay hooked up on as many as you can. And what a lot of you guys are probably finding out when you're out there too is you're catching some giant rock bass, right? They're kind of like little freshwater groupers. Some of you guys from down south call them red eyes. And I've had more than a couple of guys come in and show me pictures of, limits of giant rock bass, and they're just happy as all get out because they're catching all these big rock bass. And they're great table fare guys, especially if you just keep them cold. So a lot of guys are getting, coolers with ice, and then they're getting their incidental catch of rock bass when they're out there. They're throwing the smallies back like they should, because their season's closed anyways. And they're taking home a cooler full of rock bass, and then walleyes mixed in as well, of course, because there's walleyes everywhere out there. So, but definitely, those rock bass are great table fare, and they're pretty fun on light tackle actually too, and great for the kiddos to catch. And those fish are spawning as well. So, muskie guys are going to be out in force starting tomorrow, and but I know a lot of the guys are going to go run across to Canada and troll over there in Canada. But anyways, muskie season opens, and we got a lot of new tackle in the store as far as all the muskie stuff goes. Perch fishing is still going out there in some areas. I know guys that are still fishing some shallow weeds up there on the Anchor Bay side. But I mean, even places like the dumping grounds, anywhere where you got weeds coming up now, it's all fair game for these perch. Everything is late this year, but the weeds are starting to come up pretty good in some areas. So there is some structure, and those perch are definitely going to be up in the weeds. And I also wanted to mention too, to try to get ahead of the curve, over there in that dumping grounds area too, now that northeast corner ought to be fire right now for walleyes too, with all those fish coming out of the Detroit River. That's one of the first places they'll hold up, is in those weeds over there in the northeast corner of the dump. So maybe head over there if you want to try to get away from the crowds, although I'm not the only one that's probably thinking that, so you probably aren't going to be alone if you go over there now this time of the year as well. Panfish are still in and spawning. I'm sure pumpkin seeds and gills. For you guys fishing the canals are going to start loading up with boats now, so it's going to be a lot harder for you to do. But there's still plenty of these weed beds coming up now that are going to start. These panfish are going to start going into these weed beds and holding up. So you shouldn't have any trouble getting pumpkin seeds and bluegills and some of those near shore weed beds. And with that, I think that's all I've got to talk about for this week. I know I've said a lot because we opened up with a bunch of housekeeping stuff. But great weather ahead of us, great fishing ahead of us, and we'll see you at the shop this weekend. Hey, if you like this video content and you want to get updated as soon as the next video is out there, hit that subscribe button and the little bell icon, and you'll get notified as soon as the next video is up. Is it live or is it Memorex? You're too young to even remember that, aren't you? They used to have commercials where somebody would like sing in a really high-pitched voice, they would say, is it live or is it Memorex, right? And the live person would break the glass, and then with a high-pitched voice, and then they'd have some like other tape brand and glass wouldn't break, and then but they'd do the Memorex again and the glass would break, you know, and it was like, and then when you played tapes over and over and over again, the tape would stretch and eventually your music would be like and it was time you had to throw the tape out. Old technology with John Bacarella, yes.